Prepare to the
That's when I passed out. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but when I woke up, the demon was gone. I tried to get to my feet with a jerk, but was still too woozy to be spry. Relax, friend, and get your bearings. I have a feeling that we're in for a long night. I swung my head around wildly to search for the speaker, emitting a soft cry when I realized that he was sitting next to me. Nearly invisible in his black clothing, he sat quietly with his arms wrapped around his knees. He was positioned so that he could watch over me, but he was looking at the stars. Where's the fucking demon? I managed to mumble. He's gone, the man in black replied simply. I crawled to my hands and knees and checked my body for damage. The air smelled like sulfur and smoke, and there was still a white powder residue ring around the two of us. But there was no further sign of a fire, let alone the conflagration that had nearly consumed us. My pat-down revealed a wound on my temple that was no longer actively bleeding. Nothing else seemed to be damaged. In a wave of panic, I checked my pockets. The watch was there, intact. So was the rosary. Where had I put the book? I tried to pull the memory from my throbbing head. It came fuzzily out. I had been holding it when the demon hit me. I hadn't had time to put it away. I used my hands to search the grass, which was completely occluded in the night, for any signs of it. It's gone, the man in black said, with a hint of sadness. What? How do you know it's gone? How do you know what I'm looking for? What did you do with it? I was gradually starting to get my bearings, and I realized that I had a lot of questions. It made me choose, the man said simply. I waited for a further explanation, because that was an obviously stupid response. When it became apparent that he would not go any further, I tried to get articulate. What? Like I said, my attempts to regain my bearings were gradual. The man finally turned to look at me. He had short brown hair that was parted neatly to one side and fairly light skin that contrasted with his black shirt and pants. Your book was obviously special. When the bull demon knocked you to the ground, it flew past the reach of the fire. I was worried that it would kill us both, but then the demon noticed it lying on the ground. When I followed its gaze, it smiled and allowed a gap in the fire for me to pass through. He sighed wearily. I knew what it was doing. It wanted me to pick either you or the book, knowing that I would forsake whichever one I left. I chose to stay with you. It sealed the fire ring, stole the book from the ground, and walked away. The fire died down shortly after, and I've been here ever since. He ran his fingers through his hair. To be honest, I think that he wanted to witness a person losing something important more than he wanted to hurt either one of us physically. You see, he finished, it knows that physical damage ends with death and did not want to let us off that easily. He stood up and returned to gazing at the stars. The man in black said all of this like it was the most normal thing in the world. Who the fuck are you? He smiled visibly in the moonlight. Sebastian, he offered as a way of explanation and extended his hand. Peter, I responded hesitantly and shook it. So, you put down the ring of salt? It seemed like the right thing to do when the demon started that fire. I grabbed my hair in confusion. Right. But I forgot my salt, see? I don't know why I was trying to contradict him, but my mind was refusing to accept all of the facts. I brought my own, he replied simply. Ah! Though I did not doubt the honesty of his response, it only added to my confusion. You're confused by why I'm here, Sebastian responded, though it was not a question. More than a little, was all I could offer. May I politely ask you the same question? He asked kindly. The thing is that I had felt so justified in questioning his motives, but suddenly my response of I've been hunting demons all day and just got back from a forest jaunt with my dead parents made me seem like the crazy person. I live here? Seemed like a good enough explanation. I see, he said in a calm yet urgent voice. And it appears that our questions will have to wait for another time. Why is that? I asked him suspiciously. Well, you say that you live here. Is that by any chance your house? He pointed over my left shoulder. I spun around to view a naked-shitting sight. My entire home was engulfed in flames. We were able to sprint there in under a minute. My phone, of course, was inside the inferno. Do you have a phone? I screamed at Sebastian. Why? He yelled back over the flames as he ran up alongside me. I stared at him incredulously. To call the fucking fire department, Professor? Do you have a phone? He shook his head calmly. It's a demon fire, he explained, then stood still and caught his breath. This did not satisfy me. I don't really give a shit what kind of fire destroys my home. I want it put out. Have you ever been burned by it? I suddenly remembered my hand. The one that showed no physical damage after being burned, yet still hurt like hell, actually. Sebastian could see realization dawning in my eyes. There were no scorch marks on the ground either, he offered. I looked up at the still burning house, then back at him. But won't it disturb the neighbors? He didn't flinch. No police or fire came when the bull demon surrounded us in flame. This was true. I don't think anyone can see it unless they want that person to see it, he offered. I turned back around to look at the flaming home, which had all the apparent subtlety of a sledgehammer to the groin. So, no one else can see this? Well, he countered, still talking loudly over the din. Where are your neighbors? I looked around. No one was out. Either I lived next to the world's most terrible people, which I definitely would have said about Buster while growing up, or he was bizarrely accurate. I looked back at Sebastian, brow furrowed. Who the fuck are you? I asked for the second time that night. I'm a priest by trade, but have recently been a full-time denized of the road, he explained, touching his nose delicately. In the firelight, I could see that it was slightly bruised and swollen. Believe me, I have a lot of questions for the man I encountered, unconscious at the feet of a supernatural monster, and based on what's happening to your house, you probably have more to answer than I do. But the stories will simply have to wait, he finished. And why is that? I shot back, not liking the fact that he was almost certainly right. Because, Peter, if we're the only ones who can see the fire, it means that they're sending us a message. A wall of ice cascaded down my back. And what message is that? I asked, secretly not wanting him to have an answer. Father Sebastian looked past me, across the series of shimmering windows and into the flaming attic. They want us to come in. Sebastian had enough salt for the both of us. It only stops the fire, I think, he offered. It won't do much against the monsters themselves. He poured some from one drawstring pouch into another and handed one to me. We can get more salt inside if they haven't taken it. We can collect a lot of things from inside if we're smart. My parents, they might have some surprises hidden throughout the house, I offered. He nodded, very matter-of-factly. Do you have any sunglasses or sage on you? I looked at him incredulously. No, I rarely bring sunglasses on impromptu nighttime hikes, I responded. He gave a wan smile. Be glad if that question is the strangest thing to happen to you today. He pulled his own rosary from his pocket. I noticed that it seemed to be an exact replica of mine, but I realized that, too, would have to be a story for another day. The demons learn the most about us from our eyes, he explained over the noise. They're more like people than anyone would care to admit. Sunglasses help with this. And the sage? It won't kill them, if that's what you're asking. It's a strong irritant, sort of like tear gas for monsters. Well, I'm fresh out of sage at the moment as well, unfortunately. I looked to his hand. And the rosary? I've seen it in action. He paused before speaking. That's a deep question. I'd love to have an extended theological discussion at a later date. Let me put it in this way. Would a stack of $10 million be a powerful thing? Money is power, I noted, glancing nervously at my inflamed front door. Of course it can be, but imagine if you had $10 million and there was only one other person on Earth. Imagine that person did not care about the money. All of the power would be gone because it's only real when it creates an interaction between two people. But the power was only what those two people chose, created, and gave of themselves in the first place. So the rosary can be extremely powerful or worthless, depending on what you choose to make it. Do you understand? Not really, I responded honestly. Good. You're on your way to getting it then, he finished. Clearer answers than this were warranted. I really, really wish that I had my parents' book right now. What about this? I asked, pulling out the pocket watch. He eyed it curiously. I've never seen anything quite like that before, at least not for spiritual things. I was interrupted by a roar of flames erupting from an upstairs window. Peter, I think something's trying to get out. We don't have much time. I felt the sweat drip down my neck. why does it want us to come in if we're planning to stop it? He ran his fingers through his hair again. They'll be more powerful if they can hurt something first, and I believe it thinks that we will serve that purpose. He sighed. But we don't have a choice. Whatever is in there will escape soon, and it will do so with or without taking in a couple more extra victims beforehand. But we can stop it, right? Well, they don't have any faith in us. We stood in silence for a moment. A fistful of salt spread wide across my front entry hall, flying from my outstretched palm in all directions. It was enough to cut a clear path through the fire. My black-clad friend and I walked shoulder to shoulder through the entry hall, flames licking upward, unable to reach us. "Welcome to hell," I offered. Sebastian and I came to the end of the hall, which opened up to a living room. While demonic flames leapt across the walls, the floor was free of fire and uncannily dark. It took me several seconds to notice the girl. She was about 6 years old and sat bound to a chair across the room. Her wide blue eyes betrayed pure terror. Blonde pigtails shook in fear. She was unable to speak due to an excessively tight gag in her mouth, and she was tied hand, waist, and foot to the chair with several layers of rope. Her little legs were too short to even reach the floor. "Son of a bitch!" I screamed and ran forward to help her. Part of me knew that she was probably bait and that perhaps I should have just left her there. But how could I justify combating demons if I became one myself? I'd rather gain by losing than lose by gaining. I suddenly realized that I almost certainly did not know the truth about my parents' death, and I charged across the room for her anyway. I was suddenly knocked to the ground, just feet from the girl. I could hear her high-pitched moans. I rolled around to face my assailant. Sebastian had me pinned. He was screaming, "Get back! Get back into the hole!" But I couldn't leave the girl. Even as he pulled me to my feet, I resisted and tried to reach her. Sebastian changed tactics. He spun around and placed himself between me and her, still grasping my neck with his right hand. The fire roared. Sebastian lifted up his left hand and shoved against the girl's chest. It was the hand with the rosary. An ungodly scream shook the walls of the house. The girl flew, chair and all, toward the back wall. She slammed against it and pitched forward. But she didn't hit the ground. 10-foot-long appendages ripped from her torso, shearing the chair into a million pieces. The appendages, 6 of them, slammed to the ground and raised what was left of the girl into the air. They appeared to be metallic legs, flailing around like they belonged to a robotic insect the size of a truck. But its head stayed the same, pigtails and all, except that the whole thing was now blue, save for its yellow eyes. And God did it scream. The blue demon slammed its leg into the ground, sharp metallic points causing the wooden floor to splinter. I stared up at its innocent baby girl face in complete horror and disgust. Then its legs lowered the face down to hover above mine. It hung a tongue from its childlike head that looked like a human tongue, but for the fact that it was 2 feet long and blue. All of this happened in less than 6 seconds, and I did not react quickly enough. It lapped its long, unholy tongue across my face, deeply impressing it into my cheek. It was icy cold and extremely wet, and felt exactly like the world's mostly sickly, rotten peach. The tongue was evil. As soon as it had licked me, I couldn't stop myself. I fell to the ground and started crying uncontrollably, insatiably, huge sobs raking my body. I didn't care about the fire. I didn't care about Sebastian fruitlessly shaking my body. I didn't care about the demon above me or even about dying, because that tongue, that horrible tongue, it did something to me. It touched me deeply, and I cried and cried and cried and cried and I cried. It's in the dustiest books that you may find the best stories.